Hello everybody, it's me Jones J here. Today, we're diving into a topic that may seem pretty straightforward at first, measuring the height of buildings. Now, you probably are thinking, how could this possibly be so complicated? It's as simple as measuring from the ground up to the top, right? But as it turns out, things get a little more complicated when you take a closer look to try and figure out the true height of a building. Factors like antennas, spires, and even the very definition of top have all led to a surprising amount of controversy and debate. In this video, we'll take a look at how building height measurements have evolved over time and how we currently measure the world's tallest buildings. Before we begin, I make content on a variety of topics including architecture, gaming, urbanism, and more, so be sure to click the subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you can stay up to date on my content. In the early days of skyscraper construction, measuring a building's height was indeed pretty simple. When the earliest skyscrapers in New York City and Chicago were built, the height was simply recorded from the bottom to the top of the structure as it was completed. If a building had architectural features like spires or decorative elements, those were usually included in its total height measurement. We can especially see this when we line up the historical world's tallest buildings side by side. The Sano Building, Metropolitan Life Tower, and Woolworth Building all clearly show progression in height from bottom to top when lined up next to each other. Ask anyone which building is taller and they'll be able to tell you just by looking. Buildings like 40 Wall Street, the Chrysler Building, and Empire State Building would later incorporate things like spires and mooring masts into their heights. Despite incorporating new architectural features to help boost the heights of these buildings, it is still very clear when looking at them side by side which buildings are taller to the average person. But here's where things start to get tricky. In cases like the Empire State Building and later the World Trade Center and the Sears Tower, when these buildings were completed, they were measured bottom to top, including all architectural features they had upon completion, just like the prior world's tallest buildings. That means that the Empire State Building was measured to the top of its mooring mast, and the World Trade Center Twin Towers and Sears Tower were both measured to the tops of their roofs. However, later on, antennas were installed on the tops of these buildings to provide better telecommunications to the area, as elevating antennas higher up by placing them on top of skyscrapers proved to help improve coverage in the area. Despite adding height to the buildings though, the antennas weren't actually counted as part of the official height because they were added on after construction. These early skyscrapers set the stage for how height was defined in a basic sense, but they also later introduced a problem. If you add something onto the roof after the building was constructed, should it count towards the height, making the building taller? This debate around antennas and spires would come up again in a big way a few decades later. In 1998, the title of world's tallest building moved outside the United States for the first time. Upon completion, the Petronas Twin Towers in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia claimed the title of world's tallest building, surpassing the Sears Tower in Chicago. But this came with some major controversy. Why, you might ask? Well, let's take a look again at the prior world's tallest buildings all lined up. You can clearly see a progression in height as you move from the Metropolitan Life Tower to the Sears Tower. Now let's add in the Petronas Twin Towers. And yeah, you can probably see the problem right away. To many people, the Petronas Twin Towers appear much shorter than the Sears Tower, and in many ways they are. The Sears Tower, if measured by the height of its highest occupied floor, roof, or the tip including its antennas, would actually be taller than the Petronas Twin Towers. But because the Petronas Twin Towers upon completion featured spires that made it slightly taller than the roof of the Sears Tower, which was its total height upon its completion, then by our previous definition, that technically makes the Petronas Twin Towers the new tallest building in the world, despite appearing shorter than the Sears Tower. This discrepancy sparked quite a debate in the architectural and engineering communities, prompting a discussion for how we should measure building height. The main question to answer was, what exactly counts as the top of a building? Some people believe that it should be the height to the roof. Others believe it should be the height to the tip of the building, which includes all antennas, masts, poles, etc. Some people suggested measuring height as the highest occupied floor, or in other words, which building lets you stand the highest above ground. To address all of this, the Council on Tall Buildings and Urban Habitat, or CTBUH, created an official way to measure building height. It basically went back to the original definition of measuring bottom to top upon a building's completion, but with some added nuances. This standard would go on to shape what is and isn't counted as part of a building's height. So, what is the official standard now? Well, the CTBUH introduced a new term called architectural height, which would be the official way to measure building height going forward. This definition measures the building from bottom to top upon completion as before, but as I said, with some added nuances. The bottom of a building would be defined as the lowest open-air pedestrian entrance, and the top would be defined as the highest point that's an integral part of the building structure. This means that spires, as long as they're a permanent part of the design, are counted since they are considered part of the building. Antennas, however, don't make the cut because they can be added and removed at any time. This means that they are not considered a structurally integral part of the building, so they are excluded from the official height measurement. In addition to this, another term you'll hear is vanity height. This refers to the portion of a building's height that doesn't include usable or occupied floors, essentially the extra height added for aesthetics. Because vanity height has over time increasingly been used to give buildings that extra height and visual appeal without actually adding usable space, the CTBUH does impose a limit to how much vanity height a building can have and still be considered a true skyscraper. At least 50% of the building's height has to come from occupied space, meaning that you can't just place a really tall spire on top of your house and claim it to be the world's tallest building. Some other bullet points that the CTBUH lists as factors for measuring height include that the highest occupied floor should be a conditioned floor where people continually either work or live, thus including observation decks but excluding mechanical floors, that parapets and screen walls should be included in the height, and that signage and lettering should not count in the height. For more on how the CTBUH officially measures building height, check the link in the description. The CTBUH's guidelines on architectural height have helped create a consistent way to measure and compare building heights, even if it doesn't always match up with what the eye might think is the tallest. In conclusion, measuring a building's height isn't as simple as it might seem at first. From early measurements taken from the ground to the roof, to debates over antennas and spires, to the CTBUH's official guidelines for architectural height, defining the world's tallest building has been a journey in itself. Next time you visit a city with a lot of skyscrapers and gaze up in awe at those soaring heights, remember that there's a lot more that goes into measuring them than you think. Thanks a lot for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe so that you do not miss my future content. Let me know how you think building height should be measured down in the comments below. Where do you draw the line? The tip, roof, highest occupied floor, or somewhere else? Let me know down in the comments. Thanks a lot for watching, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.